Tariffs were sold as a shield. Instead, they have turned into a boomerang slicing through American factories, runways, and wallets. The plan looked simple: raise duties, bring work home, shrink the trade gap. Yet each new levy adds invisible weight to bolts, soybeans, and smartphone screens that cross the border. That weight shows up as higher price tags. Families feel it at the checkout, and workshop managers feel it in thinner margins. Manufacturers who buy foreign steel or microchips now pay more, so they build fewer tractors and turbines. Farms that once shipped corn and beef across oceans watch retaliation shut their best markets. Even packaging costs climb because resin pellets for plastic wrap and cardboard pulp arrive by ship. The shock is spreading along flight paths. Commercial aviation relies on long contracts and tight cost control. Europe's biggest budget carrier, Ryanair, still waits for 29 of the special MAX 8-200 jets it ordered from Boeing. And it has firm commitments for 150 larger MAX 10 aircraft, with the same number again penciled in. Those planes are supposed to arrive between 2027 and 2032, and are central to the low-fare model that squeezes nearly 200 passengers into every departure. But Chief Executive Michael O'Leary fired a warning shot to Washington. If export duties lift the bill even slightly, the airline will think again, and may walk away. The letter he sent to Congressman Raja Krishnamurthy spelled it out. If costs jump, we will revisit every single order and shop elsewhere, no matter how awkward the switch. The threat sounds bold, yet Ryanair's options are limited. Airbus is booked solid through the decade, and turning to Europe's champion would require a mixed fleet that raises maintenance bills. The Chinese plane maker Comac offers the C919, but that jet seats fewer travelers and still waits for European certification. O'Leary says he would only touch it if the discount reached 10 or maybe even 20%. And even then, reliability and resale value remain open questions. Politicians now wade into the cockpit. Representative Krishnamurthy warned publicly that buying Chinese aircraft could expose the airline to security risks, spare part shortages, and nervous passengers who read headlines before boarding. Lawyers then whisper about insurance premiums. How high will they climb if regulators distrust the data baked into a flight computer chip? Boeing cannot afford fresh doubts. Production lines slowed by quality snags already missed delivery dates, and every threatened cancellation alarms suppliers from Wichita to South Carolina. Meanwhile, Beijing has ordered its carriers to pause Boeing handovers and to stop buying American parts. Several MAX 8 jets painted for Xiamen Airlines flew back to Seattle with their seats still wrapped in plastic, victims of tariffs that doubled list prices overnight. India's flag carrier is also hesitating. Air India placed a headline-grabbing commitment for 220 Boeing jets in 2023, but it is now waiting before exercising options for 7 more. Executives want clearer schedules first, and they quietly ask whether grounded Chinese deliveries could be redirected to Delhi instead. Aviation tells only part of the story. Car makers now feel the pinch as semiconductors and battery chemicals face fresh duties. Tesla's shine is fading on European streets, where sales in France fell by roughly 60% year-on-year in April. And Denmark saw an even steeper slide. Protesters upset with Elon Musk's politics target showrooms, torch-parked cars, and plaster factories with guerrilla projections. Campaigns like Tesla Takedown tell drivers to dump their cars and shares, momentum any newcomer can exploit. Heavy machinery feels the squeeze too. Caterpillar notes that excavator frames cut in Illinois now carry surcharges for imported hydraulic pumps. Builders pass the hike on to apartment buyers already fighting high interest rates. A single idle digger can stall 10 subcontractors down the chain. Electricians, glaziers, landscapers. Tariff math rarely stops at the first invoice. The ripple reaches grocery aisles. Juice makers pay more for aluminium cans. Bakeries pay more for vanilla from Madagascar. And shoppers switch to store labels. Small changes, yet multiplied by millions of households, they drain spending power as surely as a tax. Behind these corporate dramas sits a macro picture. In the first quarter of 2025, the American economy slipped into a modest contraction as firms and households rushed to import goods before the next tariff wave. That rush bloated the trade deficit to a record and sliced almost 5 full percentage points off gross domestic product. Prices kept climbing. The main inflation gauge sat near 3.5%, forcing the Federal Reserve to hold interest rates high. Across the Atlantic, exporters grabbed a brief windfall. The euro area grew about 0.4% quarter-on-quarter, equal to roughly 1 1/5% annualized. Ireland, Spain, and Lithuania led the pack as they crammed containers bound for Boston and Houston while duties were still zero. Yet that tailwind will fade as soon as levies bite and demand cools. Mexico and Canada, bound to the United States by rail and pipeline, hope nearshoring will soften the blow. Factories in Monterrey already assemble air conditioners for Midwestern stores, while auto plants in Ontario weld battery housings for Detroit. But if final demand sags, even the friendliest geography cannot fill empty order books. Most forecasters now sketch a mild American recession that runs through much of the year before a slow rebound. Growth could hover around zero, inflation may stick near 3%, and borrowing costs will likely remain restrictive well into 2026. That sets the stage for weaker energy demand, a strong dollar that strains emerging markets, and lower appetite for risk everywhere. Suppliers feel the chill first. Small machine shops that mill wing spars in Kansas, soybean farms along the Mississippi Delta, mining towns in Nevada whose aluminium now competes with subsidized imports. When big buyers pause, these smaller players swallow the delay without the cash cushion a multinational enjoys, and layoffs ripple outward. Policymakers find themselves in a maze with no clear exit. Cutting rates risks fueling the very price rises tariffs were meant to contain, yet keeping money tight can turn a slowdown into a slump. Trade negotiators hint at talks, then headlines about national security harden positions again. Businesses planning decade-long investments can only shrug and tighten their horizons. Europe also faces dilemmas. Airbus may be sold out, but a prolonged drop in global travel could turn those full order books into bargaining chips for airlines seeking discounts. If Ryanair does defect to COMAC, regulators in Brussels must decide how quickly to certify a jet built under Beijing's wing, and whether to accept Chinese data on lightning strike tests or emergency evacuation drills. Investors scan the horizon for telling signs. Orders logged at Wichita fuselage plants, contracts signed by chip makers in Arizona, bookings for container ships after the next customs deadline. Each data point feeds the larger question: are tariffs a temporary tactic or a long-term fixture? If duties persist, multinational firms may redraw maps and plant assembly lines closer to buyers, erasing some trade flows forever. Mexico could gain chip packaging lines, Poland could gain heat pump factories, and Vietnam could gain sewing contracts once owned by Bangladeshi mills. If a negotiated truce takes hold, the recent pain may go down as an expensive warning rather than a permanent reset. Either way, the lesson is stark. In a world of connected markets, penalties thrown at rivals rarely travel in a straight line, and the rebound can hit just as hard at home.